Okay, Shannon, could you put us on the record, please? Okay, we are on the record in the matter of Spar versus Cook. Both parties are present. I see Ms. Spar's mother is present, and witness that the court subpoenaed, Ms. Plum, is also present. So folks, same rules as before. I'm going to mute your devices. I will give you a chance to speak in turn. Do not unmute your device unless I direct you to unmute it. If you violate that, I'm going to give you one warning. If you do it again, I'm kicking you out of the hearing and I'm going to finish it without you. Okay, Ms. Plum, would you raise your right hand, please? You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your full name for the record.
Ashley Plum, P-L-U-M-B.
And Ms. Plum, how are you employed?
I am a CPS investigator employed with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
And could you give me briefly your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree from Michigan State University, focusing on family and child community resources and services. I have nearly 15 years in the field of child and adolescence and have been employed by MDHHS for 6 years.
In the course of your work as a CPS investigator, were you called upon to investigate the family that is before us today, Ms. Spar and Mr. Cook?
Yes, I was assigned 2 investigations with this family in my past career.
All right, and you were kind enough to forward your investigative reports for both investigations to the court. If I'm remembering correctly, is it correct that neither complaint was substantiated?
That is correct.
During the course of either investigation, did you discover any facts that would suggest that Mr. Cook is a danger to either one of his children?
No.
In the course of your investigation, did you, well, let me ask you before I do that, are you familiar with the term parental alienation?
Yes, I am.
That's part of your scholastic training in family and child issues?
Yes.
In either investigation, did you see any indication of possible parental alienation by either parent?
Through each investigation, although it wasn't my direct allegation or the direct assignment, through both investigations, there were situations where the girls were not visiting per the court ordered visitation is what I understood. And each investigation, I believe, was for different reasons. The second investigation was originally due to COVID-19, so they were staying with their mother, which was originally agreed upon. And then the first investigation, I do not recall, I'd have to look back in my notes, but I do believe there was some withholding from from court-ordered visitation.
During the course of each investigation, you had opportunity to interview both girls privately.
Yes, I did.
Did you see any indication in either investigation that someone was trying to influence the girls' reports to you?
The most recent investigation, I did interview both girls, and I would answer that question as my interview with the younger child, Chloe, was a bit different in the reference to she was speaking upon stories and incidents that she was not present for or that she was told that had happened. When asked how she knew those things, she would reference that her mom had told her those things, if that would answer your question.
Was that at all concerning to you?
Yes, it was.
Tell me why.
It was apparent that her recollection of things was not coming from her own recollection. It was coming from someone else, which she shared was her mother. It was almost as if she was speaking from someone else's perspective. She wasn't answering the questions like a young child would. She was answering the questions about things that were told to her, and she was telling me that her mom told her.
So with respect to your most recent investigation, I remember reading that you had made a recommendation to the parents concerning counseling. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
What was your recommendation?
I was strongly encouraging that the mother follow up and get both girls, but specifically the older daughter, enrolled in counseling. That was also strongly encouraged from their primary care doctor, and that had been talked about with their family care, regular family care doctor as well. The older daughter, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The older daughter was displaying more like anxiety issues relating to visitation, Carl, and it was important that she had the outlet to talk to somebody.
How was that recommendation for counseling received?
I actually made a referral to the healing place for both girls. And then that was when I closed out my investigation. So I made Ms. Barr aware that I had made the referral, and I had made her aware that somebody would be calling her from the local resource, a healing place, to set up counseling. And that was when I closed my report. So I'm not sure, I don't have an answer to the follow-up on that. I apologize.
In either of your investigation, did you uncover any reason why these girls shouldn't be regularly visiting with their father?
No, there was no imminent risk or safety hazards identified at their father's home. What they did express was anxiety and emotional concerns that was recommended to discuss further through therapy. The concerns that I addressed with Mr. Koch was like the cracking of the toes and the way that he was engaging with his daughters. And I recommended that he not do those things anymore because the girls expressed that they didn't like that. And And that was something that they didn't enjoy when they were with him. So things like that were reviewed with him as far as safety and engagement with his daughters. And he was receptive to that.
Okay, Ms. Plum, I don't have any more questions for you, but I want to give each parent the opportunity to question you. So I'm going to unmute Ms. Spar. Ms. Spar, solely for the purpose of you asking Ms. Plum questions, not for the purpose of you giving testimony in response to anything she said, okay?
I would
Do you
like
have any
to,
questions?
yes, I have questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay.
go ahead with your question.
Okay, the first thing that I would like to ask Mrs. Plum is, do you remember when you first came here and me and Isabel and Chloe were all talking with you, and I said to you that we have learned our lesson about not recording conversations and that it is important for us to record every single conversation that we have with someone that is involving this particular case, because we've found in the past that people say things that we didn't say, and they also try to minimize what was said. So we informed you that the conversation was going to be recorded. I recorded my conversation with you, and Isabel took it upon herself to record her conversation with you. So we do have those. I just want to, I'm going to ask her some questions.
Is there a question? Is there a question in there somewhere?
Yep.
Please get to the question.
Do you remember telling Isabel after Isabel had a conversation with you, do you remember saying to Isabel, based on what I have heard as far as your involvement with your dad, without telling you to disobey a judge's order, I'm telling you for your safety, do not go with your dad again. Do you remember telling that to Isabel?
No, I typically don't tell children not to go with their fathers. Obviously, I want the court order to be followed. I cannot go against the court-ordered parenting time. But if she feels like she doesn't want to visit, then that's your choice as a parent.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What I would have said.
So I will refresh you on what you told us. You said, without telling you to disobey the judge's order, I'm telling you that for your safety, do not go with your father based on what you have told me. That's what you told Isabel. I have another question. Do you remember what Isabel said to you when you asked her if she felt that her father was a danger to her? Do you remember what she said to you?
No, I had to refresh in the report what her exact response was about a danger.
Okay. She said that she felt in great fear of her father and felt like he was on the verge of triggering at times, and that she felt like he was going to attack her. She felt like he puts her in a situation where she feels like.
Let me stop you. Ms. Plum, do you remember any statement of that nature?
I remember the older child talking about her dad when he gets triggered, and I would try to get the girls to tell me what that meant, which meant like he puffs his chest, and none of that was touching the girls in any physical aggression type way. She was just describing his emotional state when he gets triggered.
Okay, I have more questions. Do you remember Isabel telling you that he puffs out his chest and pushes her backwards?
Puffs out his chest. I do remember that. I do not remember anybody saying that he pushes anybody backwards. No.
And when you were talking with Isabel, she was crying, and she said to you, we feel like we have been swept under the rug. We feel like we've been sent to several different people and nobody seems to want to help us. Do you remember what your response was to her?
Well, first, let me ask you, do you remember her saying that?
Yes, I do remember
I
her
can't
talking like
hear,
that
you're frozen.
and having those statements, which is why I recall talking to her about
Your
counseling.
Honor, you're frozen. We can't hear you.
The problem must be at your end.
Are you there? I do recall her saying that.
Hold on. I want
I
to make
can't
sure.
hear.
Looks like she's lost her connection somehow. Ms. Barr, can you hear me? Ms. Barr, can you hear me now?
I can hear. I cannot hear the question that you asked Mrs. Plum, though.
I asked her if she remembered hearing Isabel say those things, which I think is a necessarily prelude to what did you say in response. She said yes, she remembers Isabel saying those things. So now she can answer the next question. Does she remember what she told Isabel in response to that?
I do remember having a conversation with Isabel about counseling and having somebody for her to talk to about those things. And I remember letting both of them know, and the family, Chloe was present, but I'm talking as Mrs. Barr and the older child, that I am not able to violate a court order, and that I wasn't going to do that at that time. So that was the decision of Ms. Barr. But I do remember talking to Isabel about counseling and somebody for her to talk to.
Okay, I just want to make it clear that Ashley, you did say I can't tell you to
Ms.
not
Barr,
follow a judge.
Ms. Barr, I
Okay.
told you at the start, this is your opportunity to ask Ms. Plum questions.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Later, if you want later to give testimony in response to that, you will get a chance, but it's not that time.
Okay. When Isabel was talking with you, Ms. Plum, did you feel that Isabel was sincere and what she was saying was coming from her?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, for Isabel directly.
Okay. And do you feel like Isabel had reason to be scared of her dad after everything she explained to you that had happened?
That was her own personal recollection of her own emotional feelings. So she was telling me that was how she was feeling. My definition of scared is very different than hers.
Okay. But you did. Okay. And do you remember when I came back downstairs and we were talking together? Do you remember telling me that Isabel is extremely scared of her father and that she has emotional damage based on this fear? Do you remember telling me that?
That was part of our discussion for the importance of counseling. I would recollect that she was crying during our interview, and about the importance of getting her hooked up with counseling.
Okay, so you don't remember us talking to you about her counselor that she has been seeing now for 6 months? You don't remember us talking to you about the counselor that she sees every week?
To my knowledge, she was not in counseling at the time that I was at your house.
Yes, she was. She had been doing counseling since the beginning of school, and she also did counseling at the end. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting sorry. Okay, my next question is, both girls explained to you about how Carl holds Chloe down as she is screaming and crying with tears, and he holds Chloe down and he pulls her toes and he will not let her up, and that this is very torturous and painful for Chloe, and that you felt like that is definitely beyond the lines of appropriate behavior, and that this is, oh, you expressed that this is almost a form of torture. Do you remember that?
I have had very significant abuse cases that directly result in torture. I do not remember saying the word torture about the cracking of the toes. I do recall saying that was inappropriate, and if the girls didn't want him to do that, telling each girl, tell him to stop, and then I would follow up with him about a conversation, telling him that wasn't appropriate, they didn't like that anymore, which I did. I do not recall saying the word torture. Okay.
Do you remember telling me that you felt that it was important for the girls to go to Shannon Louder's because she is able to work with a friend of the court, and that you would like to recommend to her that the girls be supervised while in the care of Carl? Do you remember telling us that?
I remember telling that Shannon Louder is in my opinion, one of the best. And I remember telling you that I'd make the referral. I do not recall saying anything about recommending supervised visits because that is not something that I do.
Okay. You said you can't do that, but okay, I'll switch to the next question. Do you feel that it is okay for Carl to be able to hold Chloe down, do things such as pulling the toes or twisting her hand or her wrist very hard? Do you feel that that's okay?
I don't feel like that's okay if the girls don't like that, and that's the conversation that I had with him.
Okay. Do you think any child would like their hand or their wrist to be turned to the point that is very painful and then for it to be smacked? Do you feel that that's not abuse?
The allegations in that investigation did not rise to the level of a physical abuse per policy that the Children's Protective Services manual follows. I had the conversation with him about the inappropriateness if the girls did not like the way that he engaged with them, and that conversation was held with him, and I would take that as a safety plan moving forward.
Okay. Can Mrs. Plum, I would like for you to repeat what Isabel said to you on Friday, September 25th. Could you explain to me what she said happened that night, please?
Am I able to refer back to my report for this?
Of course you can. If that would
do whatever you.
Friday, September 12th. Of 2020?
Yes.
I'm thinking if that was the first day. I got the case on October 15th.
Okay. It was, they had gone on September 20. That's what this whole thing got, how all of this got started, is on September 25th. They went with their dad that Friday night. And there was a situation.
Okay, Ms. Farr. Ms. Farr, I don't want you testifying. Apparently, Ms. Plum, her question was not what the child said to you on September 25th, but rather what the child told you happened on the 25th.
Yeah.
Okay, the first contact that I had with the children was on October 16th. And what was the specific question? I'm sorry.
Okay, so when you got here, we explained to you the situation where they had to go with their father. It was court ordered to start going on September 25th. It was a Friday. And when he showed up at the house, there was a situation that happened that Friday, and we spoke in great detail about what happened, all three of us. And then
Right.
me and Chloe went upstairs. Can you tell me what Isabel's testimony was to you about that day?
I'm referring to my notes for this specific situation. I talked to Isabel about quite a bit. So let me refer to the specific situation about that specific situation. Is this when Chloe was crying, saying she didn't want to go? There were a lot of different situations about when she talked about when Carl showed up.
So you can't remember what the girls and I had said to you happened that Friday?
Oh, well, if you just speaking off the cuff, yes, that he pulled up, that they didn't want to go, that he walked down the street with Chloe. Is that the situation? Because there's a lot of situations that we talked about. And which time,
Okay,
yeah,
we talked
are you referencing?
Okay. It was when he showed up and
Right.
he had seen Isabel in 5 months. He had not seen Chloe in a certain amount of time, but he didn't even say hi to them. And they got into the car and he started cussing them out in front of me and my mom. And it was extremely loud, and that they pulled away and went down the street.
Let me stop you, Ms. Farr. I don't want to hear your description of what you
Okay.
saw. Ms.
I'm
Plum, do you
giving
have
her,
that?
it was what our whole reason for having.
Yes, and then he took them to his house. Isabel decided that she didn't want to stay. So because he said he was going to take Isabel to the grandma's, is my recollection. He took Isabel home, and you're shaking your head. So there's a lot of situations that were talked about. So this is not the right situation.
That is, but that's not what we told you happened. So obviously you don't remember at all what happened. That's fine.
I'm telling you what I remember.
Okay. I can see that you have not taken good enough notes to refer to that.
Okay. Do you want me to read from my report, from what I wrote in my report?
Well, I would hope that you would have referred to what the girls actually said to you happened.
I was just doing that.
Okay, that's not what was said in the interview.
Ms. Farr, I don't want you arguing with the witness, okay?
No, I'm not. I'm going to ask more
No,
questions.
that's exactly what you're doing, and I don't want you doing it. You can ask questions if you want. I don't want to hear arguments from you. Questions are what you can ask, and if you go afield of this much more, I'm just going to cut you off.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a situation where Chloe said that I told her something?
One situation that strikes my memory right away is when I was interviewing Chloe, she was referencing a time when she was telling me a story about how Carl pushed Miss Farr down the stairs, and asked her how she knew that, or if she was there, did she see that, asking clarifying questions. And she had told me that her mom told her that, which is how she knew that. And she wasn't, if I recall, she said she wasn't even born yet. So that was one of the stories. Do you want me to keep going about different stories?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that was one situation where she said that her mom had told her about something. I have to refer to my notes. I have had several investigations obviously going on since then. So
take your time, Ms. Plum.
oh, okay, here. Okay, so there was a time where Chloe was referencing when the family had a puppy, or Isabel had a puppy, and that the puppy was thrown in the snowbank. And I asked her if she had saw that, and how'd she knew that? This particular situation, she said that Isabel had told her that story. So that was another one that I was referencing that wasn't coming directly from Chloe's recollection. Another story was that Chloe talked about the family having a bunny, and her dad and Carl twisting the bunny's head and killing the bunny. I asked more clarifying questions about this situation, and if she saw it happen, how she knew these things, and that she had said that she wasn't born yet, and Isabel had told her that story. There was a story about a the Miss Barr, and then just asking clarifying questions about words and definitions that Chloe was using, such as the words violence or evil or cruel, and just asking Chloe to elaborate on those words and what those words mean. And she did not know the definition of those words. That is pretty much summing up the interview with Chloe as far as things that are being told to her or her perception from other people.
Okay, Mrs. Plum, do you remember? Do you remember asking Chloe if she knew what the word evil was?
Yes.
Do you remember what her response was?
I'm going to get the exact I'm going to get the exact, here it was, because I don't want to say anything incorrect because I asked her a lot of questions. She had voluntarily said he is just evil. On her own, she freely said that. I asked her what the word evil meant, if she could define that or explain what she meant by evil. And then she described the situation about the puppy. That's when she went on to talk about the puppy.
So do you think she was giving you a story of an example of evil by telling you that story about the dog, even though she wasn't present, but she was using that as an example of evil?
She was not able to define what she meant by evil, and she just started into that story. So that's all I can reference.
Okay.
Situation.
So she could not give you the definition, but she gave you a story instead of what she thought was evil.
Well, she was telling a lot of stories during my interview, and the point where she would just talk, and then she would stop and say, well, I don't remember what I was going to say. So I can't answer that appropriately to say if she was or not, because she was talking quite a bit, quite quickly, and she would stop and say, I don't remember what I was going to say. So I'm not sure. I can't answer that appropriately. Okay.
And then the other one was, do you remember asking her if she knew what the definition of, I believe what word was it that she used? Evil, and then the word dangerous. No, it wasn't. I don't know. I can't remember the second word. I have
violent.
Violent. Yes, violent. It's right here. Okay.
Violent. Miss Barr, I want you to excuse your children from the room right now.
Do you remember asking her about the word violent and if she knew what that word meant?
I do. I do asking her if she knew what the word violent meant, which she did not know what that word meant. I do remember at the end of the interview when Miss Spar came downstairs and told us that she was listening to the interview, and she then told Chloe that she knows what being violent means, and was explaining to Chloe, Miss Spar was explaining to Chloe what it meant, and trying to get her to talk to CPS about what the word violent meant, which then Chloe, her definition was a referee, and talked about the sport of boxing.
Okay, so do you feel that when I asked her if she could give you an example of what the word violent meant, do you think that that was a good description of what violence is?
If that was her definition of what violent meant, was boxing.
Okay.
So that was
Okay.
her definition as a young child. That was her definition of violent.
Okay, so you do feel that she did understand what you were saying, but she was not able to describe to you a definition. Instead, she gave you an example.
That was after you came down and joined the interview.
Yes, okay. And then as far as Isabel is concerned, while you were talking with Isabel, do you remember Isabel telling you that she felt like nothing was going to ever be done? That we've gone to several different people and talked to several different people. And do you remember Isabel telling you she was so afraid that you were also going to go to the judge and say to the judge that this is not a serious, dangerous situation for them to be in? Do you remember Isabel telling you this?
I remember Isabel telling me that nobody listens, and they've talked to several people. I do not recall her telling me that I was going to go to the judge and say something specific. I'd have to look back and see if I document anything about that, but I don't remember her saying me specifically going to the judge and telling him or not telling him something.
Okay. Do you remember? Well, I was asking you if you remembered her telling you that she felt like this was not going to be taken serious once again, and that they were going to be put in danger again.
I know that I explained the process to Isabel, and she was present for almost all of the conversations that I had with you about my role, specifically being an investigator for abuse and neglect, not with the friend of the court regarding recommendations or implementing change to parenting time. That's not my role. And I believe that she heard me when I was talking about that.
So you don't remember Isabel telling you specifically that she felt like this case was not going to be taken seriously, and she was scared that they were going to be put back into a dangerous situation with her father?
I remember Isabel saying that she felt that this case wasn't going to be taken seriously, and that they would have to go back with their dad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that she was scared because of what she had been through so far, that she was afraid you were going to turn your back on them like so many people had before. Do you remember having that conversation with her?
I remember having that conversation in the term that is not I cannot make a change to the parenting time. So I was going to collect all of her information and put it in my report, which I did.
Okay. You said that you felt like there was no danger in sending the children back with Mr. Cook. Could you please explain to me what no danger means?
In reference to this second investigation, regarding, there was a mention of the cracking of the toes and things that he had done while the girls were in his home. Verbally abusive. There was no reference of physical abuse and the reference of putting his hands on the children. Neither of the girls disclosed any marks or bruises. There was discussion about purposely cracking the toes and the way that he engages with the children. That was addressed with him.
Okay. Do you remember the girls explaining to you that when he gets angry, he snaps and he starts cussing about an inch away from their faces at the top of his lungs? And that Isabel explained to you that when this happens, she is frozen with fear and cannot even move and is afraid he's going to attack her. Do you remember Isabel having that conversation with you?
Yes, I do remember her talking about her definition of what she describes him as being triggered. And those things were mentioned: getting close to the face, swearing, raising his voice, things like that. And those things were discussed with him as not being appropriate. Those things also do not meet criteria to open this CPS case that I investigated.
Okay. Ashley, do you remember you and I talking about Carl using injectable steroids?
Yes, you mentioned that information to me.
Okay. And do you remember the article that I had referred to about the dangers of injectable steroids and what happens over a progressive amount of time? Do you remember having that conversation?
Yes, I remember you sharing that information with me.
Okay. And do you believe that that's true?
That is a personal opinion that I don't have any. I'm not a medical practitioner or any kind of licensure to talk about injectable steroids. I don't know enough other than the article and information that you personally shared about injectable steroids. So I don't have an answer about my opinion on injectable steroids.
So have you ever had another client that you know of that they brought to your attention that the father or mother was using injectable steroids?
Never.
Do you have any? You've never have any, so you're not real familiar with that situation before?
Never.
Okay. Ashley, do you remember the girls when we came back down the first time you were here, and myself and Chloe and Isabel, and we were talking, and you made a promise to them? Do you remember what that promise was, Ashley? Right before you left?
A promise?
Yes.
No, I don't recall making a promise.
Okay. You don't remember making the promise that you're going to do everything in your power to help to keep them safe? Do you remember saying that to them?
I don't remember using the word promise because I don't feel that I would use that in my professional career. But I do remember talking about following up and making sure that I made sure that they were safe. And part of that was making a referral for an assessment with the healing place, because that is what they specialize in.
Okay, so you don't remember telling them that you were going to do everything that you could possibly do to try to keep them safe from Mr. Cook?
Safety is my job, and that was what I was going to do: assess the situation for safety and make sure that they were safe.
Okay. Do you feel, in your opinion, after talking with Isabel and Chloe, do you feel that they have reason to be scared of them based on what they told you?
Each child had a very different with me. Okay. The older child had a lot of emotional anxiety, pent up underlying issues that I personally, again, am not licensed to address, which is why a referral was made to the healing place. The
Okay,
expressed information that I did observe that may not have been coming directly from her own mind. So that's why they had very different interviews. But I'm not sure if what your question was, but they did express their own concern, and that was addressed in this investigation.
okay. Do you remember telling me when I came back downstairs and we were talking together? Do you remember saying to me, I feel after talking to both children that they are very scared of the situation that they are being put in when they go with their father?
I remember talking to you about how Isabel was open with me and talked about her emotions and how she felt about her relationship with her father.
So you don't remember telling me that it was obvious to you that they are both very scared of going with their dad?
It was obvious to me that Isabel was emotionally charged, talking about visitation with her dad. It was obvious. Okay. And I remember telling you that I cannot violate a court order, that this will be addressed, that I would make a referral to the healing place, and things could move forward in that capacity.
Okay. Ashley, I know that you have a lot of cases, and I'm trying to stick to a question here, but this is, I'm trying to choose questions to refresh your memory based on what the kids and I said to you, and based on what you said to us. And it was a very clear question. Do you feel that my children are scared of their father?
I would have to say that Isabel expressed emotionally charged information. Her definition of being scared is very different than mine. I put her information in the report on her feelings. The information that I gathered from them was that their father had never hurt or harmed them in any criteria that would meet physical abuse in my investigation. We talked about the idea of mental injury because a lot of the information that I gathered from this investigation was emotional and underlying. It was not outward physical abuse. And we talked about that openly, that it did not meet the criteria of physical abuse.
Okay, Ashley, do you remember Chloe explaining to you that she had been held down and her toes were pulled and it hurt very bad and she was screaming while this was being done?
Yes.
Okay, do you remember Chloe telling you that he twists her wrist and her arm very hard and then hits her hard? Do you remember her telling you this?
I do not remember her saying hits her hard. No.
Okay. Do you remember Isabel explaining to you watching Carl do these things to Chloe and that she felt helpless because she could not interfere because she was afraid he would attack her?
I do not recall her saying that she was afraid he would attack her. I do believe she was expressing that she felt helpless about not being able to do anything when he was cracking Chloe's toes or holding her down.
So you don't remember Isabel telling you that she was extremely scared when he would physically harm Chloe and felt like she could not help because if she got involved, he would attack her? You don't remember Isabel saying that to you?
I just said that I do recall her telling me that story, that she would feel helpless, that she wouldn't be able to do anything.
Okay. Do you remember Isabel telling you that she felt like she had to go so that she could keep Chloe safe while she's there.
Yep, she did say that.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you, Mrs. Plum, in your professional opinion, do you feel that there is a reason for my children to have, to go with, I don't know how to word this. Do you feel in your professional opinion that there is no reason whatsoever for my kids, for us to be alarmed or in fear of my children going with Mr. Cook? In your opinion, in your professional opinion, do you feel there's no reason, based on what my children have said and based on what I have said, that there's no reason for safety whatsoever?
Ms. Spar, I'm basing my testimony on 30 days involved with your family in October to November, most recently.
So
I remember asking you, you said that you thought he was going to kill the girls and harm them. And I remember asking you, what made you feel that way and why? And had he ever done anything like that before? And had he had any weapons, anything like that that made you feel like he was going to kill you or the girls? And you could not tell me any. You just said that you felt that way. So that's your personal feeling, Ms. Spar. And my professional feeling from this investigation is that I made a referral for the girls to get assessed for their mental health. That is very important. I could not open this case based on any disclosure that I got from the girls. No.
So you don't remember what my response was, is what you're saying?
What?
When I asked you, when you said to me, why do you feel that he is going to harm? And that's not the question you asked me. You said to me, why do you feel he's going to show up and shoot up the house? I don't remember ever saying that, and it wasn't in the interview, but do you remember what my response was to you when you asked me that question?
What question? About him showing up or harming the kids?
You said to me, why do you feel that Mr. Cook is going to show up and shoot up the house? Mm-hmm. Do you remember what my response was to you?
That he had showed up before?
My response was to you that he had showed up in the past, mm-hmm. and that he had acted unpredictable, and that he was not predictable at any given time, and that there were times that he has showed violence to me in the past. And that, I mean, you don't remember that response from me and what else I said? Okay. Yes. And that we were afraid that he was going to, do you remember me saying to you that I was afraid that he was a ticking time bomb and that he was going to eventually explode?
Yes, I remember you saying that.
Okay, you do remember me saying that. Do you remember Isabel saying that to you in your interview with her?
Generalized, yes, that she thought that he was going to explode, and hence when I would ask what that means, we already talked about that.
Okay. And did she feel like he was going to?
That's what she was expressing to me, but I was trying to get her to tell me more and give me more on what that means.
Do you remember what she said about what that meant?
That he would, I already talked about that he would puff his chest, yell, get in their face, things like that. That is okay. Neglect in my professional career, Miss Spar.
Okay, I understand that there's guidelines that you have to go by, and I understand what you had said to me as far as the aspect of you don't have the power to say that you could not determine whether or not this was a physical or a mental case, and that you were having a hard time with deciding which it was. Is this a physical or is this a mental? And that you needed to talk to your supervisor about that to see if what she would have to say and how you were going to be able to place this case. That it was going to be one or the other, but you couldn't determine at the time whether it was going to be physical or mental.
Right.
Okay. So you are agreeing that we talked about physical and mental abuse in this case.
We discussed it, yes. And I talked about the child protection law, and I offered to send you
I have it.
a protection manual. We did talk
I
about
read it.
definitions of abuse and neglect.
Okay, and I did read that, and I did in that it does specifically say everything that we have talked about. It specifically talks about physical and mental.
Ms. Barr, you're supposed to be asking questions.
Sorry, I keep getting sidetracked from that. Okay, Mrs. Plum, do you remember when we were talking and I was expressing to you that my main goal was to just keep my kids safe from someone that I felt had the potential to click and to basically just snap, and that I was afraid, based on what they had been through so far, that this was going to happen and that nobody was listening to me. Mrs.
Is that,
Okay.
is that a question? Yes, I recall that conversation.
Mrs. Plum, do you know who Gabriel Fernandez is?
Who?
Gabriel Fernandez.
Not off of my memory, no.
Okay. I don't, if you don't know who he is, then I guess there's no reason to going into this questioning that I'm about to ask you. But Mrs. Plum, today, I'm asking you to please answer the questions truthfully and to the best of your ability. Do you feel, Mrs. Plum, that I have any legitimate reason to worry about my children with Mr. Cook?
Ms. Farr, I have a difficult time answering that because your perception of your own fear is different than my personal opinion or professional opinion. From the information that I gathered from this investigation, outside of your personal perception of what you think might happen, CPS cannot, that's not our role. Is we cannot stay involved for what may happen. We cannot.
Okay, so
30 days, and I assessed the situation for 30 days. In my opinion, the girls had not seen Carl in 5 to 6 months. We were discussing their emotional concerns. I talked to Carl, discussed a safety plan, and I did not have enough information to open my investigation. No.
Okay, so you don't remember saying that you needed to talk to your supervisor to determine how the case was going to be opened, whether it would be physical or mental.
Yes, I remember talking about that because we have to talk to our supervisor. It was not an opening for physical abuse. There was not enough criteria to meet that definition. I cannot change the investigation to mental injury. I am not a licensed, we talked about this. I cannot determine mental injury. That is the purpose of making the referral to a healing place.
Okay, do you remember Isabel explaining to you in tears while she was crying, Ashley? Do you remember her saying to you, "We need help. We need help Ashley, please help me and my sister. Do you remember her crying and begging you for help? I want an honest answer, Ashley. Do you
Yes.
remember her saying that to you and crying and begging for your help?
Ms. Farr, she already answered the question.
Okay.
Turn down the matrix.
I'm just saying, I'm very frustrated because this has been a very long road for me.
Ms. Farr, this is your time to ask questions. I think I've heard enough. I'm going to mute you now. Mr. Cook, do you have any questions for Ms. Plum?
Just one real quickly, Your Honor. Hello, Ashley. I was curious if you remember the video that I made when for the first time that you talked to me when Jen made the false police report, and then I had to counter her police report with the video and me making making a report on her regardless.
Yes, I do recall on the situation you're referencing in 2018 for a separate investigation that you did have a video from that situation.
And do you recall that what she stated was completely the opposite of what you've seen on that video?
From that investigation in 2018, I recall each party said a different situation on what happened. Basically, he said, she said situation. In the video, I do recall that there was no footage of the actual incident from my recollection of remembering that case, that it was like the ground, it was showing like the ground or the air, or it was no like actual incident of what happened.
Well, the video itself, it showed, I mean, the whole time me talking to her and
well, talking, yes, the verbal, but
and it also basically shows I didn't get anywhere close to her. I did not touch her like she stated. She said I pushed her against something on the porch and she got a big bruise. I never even came close to her, did I?
that case was a denial. There was no evidence that anybody, there was no evidence to determine who or what happened during that incident.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Plum, thank you. I appreciate your testimony here today. You are free to leave.
Thank you.